Up, YouTube Live? All right, let me tell everybody first on social media that I am now live at youtube.com/ramascreen1 giving you. I'm now live giving you my review of the new episode of Star Trek Discovery. uh, I love this show so much, and there's a lot to unpack here. Um, And before we start, if memory serves, that's the title episode. So give me a second here and publish. All right, you guys. Okay, so sorry I wasn't able to give you my review last night because last night I was busy. I'm here in I'm here in Austin, Texas. So last night I was busy getting or picking up my badge, and it took forever. It was my fault. I did not do the whole South by Southwest coupon thing, but luckily my friends Ashley and Scott helped me out. So that took some time, and so we didn't get home till like really late, and so I finally got to watch Star Trek Discovery season 2 episode 8 this morning. Um, right now it's Austin time. I think in Los Angeles about 6 a.m. So let's get right to it, okay? Um, all right. So, oh man. So we left off last week with Burnham getting Spock out and away from Sector 31, right? So that's a refresher for you. And in today's episode, whoa, look what happened. Freaking, they turns out the writers of the show, or the episode, I should say, want to make a connection to the original Star Trek series. Those two-part episodes in which they chronicle the Talos, Talosians. I'm sorry, I'm having a brain fart, and Vina. So I grew up with the Next Generation, but my old apartment mate or roommate or housemate used to say he was a big fan of the original series Star Trek. So he would probably be more familiar about Talos and Talosians, um, certainly more than me. Now I was thinking the other week, like when they showed the preview for this episode, I was like, okay, so who are these species? And turns out they are Telosians. And it's interesting how, because I had a conversation with my friend who is also a big trekker, and she also said like she oh, she said something along the lines of like, if only, or like, why can't CBS create a Star Trek show that's not necessarily a prequel or a sequel, just a separate story, right, of a separate crew. Um, but I think if if today's episode suggests anything, or this latest episode, is that nothing beats nostalgia. It's so easy to bank on something that's already familiar, and so they start out the episode with like footage or scenes from those two-parter episodes back in the 60s, to let not only to let you know that what you're about to see is more or less a sequel or a follow-up to that, um, to give you context, of course, but also to get you, the fans of the original series, to geek out. You know, if you are, if those two parters episodes are like some of your favorites of all time, you'd be like, "Whoa, that's awesome!" By the way, this new episode, season 2, episode 8, titled "If Memory Serves," is directed by T.J. Scott, one of my favorite TV and I think commercial directors as well. He's directed episodes on Gotham and other shows. So, and I've interviewed him once. So make sure you go check out my interview with director T.J. Scott right here on Rama Screen YouTube channel. So there's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot of things going on. So let's break it down. let's start with my comment about actress Melissa George. Oh my God, I'm so glad to see Melissa George again. I've been a big fan of hers since 30 Days of Night, which is one of my favorite vampire films of all time. If you haven't seen 30 Days of Night, you gotta check it out. I think Josh Hartnett is in that one. I haven't seen it. I haven't rewatched it in a long time. But Melissa George still looks good. Melissa George still looks amazing. And you can tell from this episode or yeah, the director T.J. Scott and his crew and they and the writing, of course, they really do their best to sort of sexualize her. Even the shot when she enters the shuttle to meet Spock in this episode, the view was from her legs. Clearly, the idea is like, whoa, who is this beautiful woman approaching Spock? And it turns out it's Vina. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar, Vina is the survivor of the survey ship Columbia in Talos planet. Um, and Telosians have this ability of creating, um, what's the word I'm looking for here? Not hallucination, but sort of like a virtual reality esque existence, as evident in this episode when they fooled Sector 31 with the projection of Burnham and Spock. So that's what they're able to do, among many other things. Of course, also um, going into one's mind, and that leads me to my next note in the or my next comment about this episode is that we get to see what exactly happens, the rift that happens between Burnham and Spock. Because thanks to the Telosians, we get to see finally what that is that made them sort of estranged, siblings. Um, Turns out when they were kids, Burnham tries to run away, and her rationalization of that is, hey, there's a lot of Vulcans that don't want humans here, so my presence in this house, in this home, in effect, endangers or puts you, Spock, and Sarek and Amanda in danger. And so Burnham uses that tactic of like, go, no, no, I don't want you, come with me. Get away, you're a freak, you're a half breed. Uh, which you can tell, evident from that scene that the tactic does affect um, the human side of Spock. We always think of Spock as like Burnham would describe it. You're always cold as the moon, right? Always logical. But you can tell from that kid Spock, little Spock, that he is hurt by that tactic, is hurt by those words that Burnham says. He's like holding back tears and whatnot. I was like, whoa. Um, but that's the tactic that Burnham knows at the time, just to keep the family safe. And Spock is right when he says it's the most primitive tactic. It's been used in many many occasions and situations in many dramas on TV or movies. It's like if you want to push people away, right? Maybe whatever motive or intention, how well meaning it could be, the way to do it is one way to do it. One way to do it is to hurt their feelings, to make an enemy out of them, to make them hate you, and that way they won't be able to like want to be with you. So that's the reason for that whole complication between Burnham and Spock. And I gotta tell you, my reaction to that is like, yeah, it's it's a it's very common. Like I said, it's been done before, and it makes sense for that situation. The whole Vulcans not liking humans thing. That was the backdrop for that motivation for Burnham. I but the thing is, I was expecting something much more earth-shattering than that. I don't know if I'm the only one, but so my overall response or reaction to the revelation of what happened between them is like cool, makes sense, but oh man, I thought it was gonna be more than that, you know. um, that said, it's cool now. So now we get that out of the way, right? So there's no more question anymore. It's like, oh, what happened? Like in the previous reviews of the previous episodes, I asked you guys like, hey, did I overlook? Did I miss out on what exactly happened between them? But now we know, and now we can move forward. Let's see what else here. Oh, Tyler. Let's talk with Tyler. Uh, he's having difficulties gaining the trust of Captain Pike, but Captain Pike is very, what's the word I'm looking for here? Very generous in giving second chances, and yet, as you've seen in this episode, um, they still have distrust towards Tyler, and it's because the one that gets corrupted, and it's gonna get explored in next week's episode even more. Uh, I forgot her name. Commander. Let me get it here. I think she's alien robot or something. Commander Arian. I want to say that's her name. Well, anyway, she she throws the Discovery off the scent by making sure that the traces of the corruption leads to Tyler, and that's smart. uh, so Tyler's being forced into the quarters. Now, here's the thing, though. There's one scene in this episode when Tyler and Pike have a conversation about what to do with Burnham and Spock, and Tyler manages to convince Pike to like trust Burnham, with her instinct. Like, yeah, I think they had this conversation in the confines of Pike's very solitude office. And in that scene, Tyler successfully manages to convince Pike to see it from his perspective. Um, and you can see just like for a split second, like Pike has that smile, right? Has a smirk smile. That's like, okay, you know, I think I can go with this Tyler, despite having reasonable reservation about him because of his past and connection to Vogue. So for that one split second when Pike charmingly smiles, it's like, all right, you have a point, Tyler. I feel like we, the audience, smile with him too. My point is that Pike is so charming, man. He can make us side with him in his opinion or perspective about Tyler. So it's like that's how influential this character is. He even influences us to like because maybe for that one split second, Pike like, oh, Tyler ain't so bad after all, and because Pike sees it that way, we see it that way, and it's just a testament to the power of the charm of the character Pike, and also the actor who plays him, Anson Mount, who is devilishly charming. um, with regards to Section 31, I and this is my second to last note. I'll leave the last one for the best about Hugh and statements. Section 31. There's this power struggle between Leland and Philippa Giorgio, and my theory is that because Alex Kurtzman, the showrunner or the executive producer of Star Trek Discovery, they're planning to make a Star Trek spin-off series focusing on Philippa Giorgio, right? So, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if my prediction is way off, but I'm guessing that by the end of this season 2, we're gonna see Leland either killed off or demoted, or just they're gonna find a way to get that character out of the picture or out of the equation, and then Philippa Georgia would be fully in charge instead of this power struggle that's going on right now. That kind of cracks me up too, because obviously Starfleet trusts Philippa Georgia even more, even though that's not the Philippa Georgia. It's the from the Terran Emperor. But you can see it's like it's rubbing inside, like it's hurting Leland's ego to have Philippa Giorgio kind of undermines him, or that the idea that everybody else respects her more than him. Uh, I think it's gonna really hit the breaking point. We don't see it right now in this episode, but we get to be entertained by at least uh, the idea that Leland may not know what he's doing compared to Philippa Georgia, who who has more experience with people like Telosians and others. So I wouldn't be surprised if, as a backdoor to whenever that will be the pilot for Philippa Georgia or Michelle Yeoh's Star Trek series, that part of that will be about getting Leland out of the way. Uh, we'll see when that happens. But that whole thing in this episode, though, it's like that whole Mexican standoff between Sector 31 and Discovery. That is really pretty intense. But luckily, Pike trusts Vina because he has history with Vina, and that whole part when like say goodbye Spock. I love it, love it, love it. But that Mexican standoff for that moment was really like, it really gets me on the like, whoa. So both ships are trying to beam up Spock and Burnham. That's not good. That's not good. That's dangerous. So I'm glad it works out. I did I not see that coming? A little bit, a little bit. I know some of you might be like, this is where the Telosians will factor in and help out with, through their abilities. So I was a little half surprised when I saw that whole Burnham and Spock showing up on the on Sector 31's ship. Half surprised, but half not surprised once the word gets in, like, oh, there's a shuttle coming in. Okay, oh, that's them. It's got to be them. And then of course you know what happens. All right, last arc to unpack, the one about Stamets, Hugh, and Tyler. Okay, the confrontation in the cafeteria is freaking awesome. Now, as Pike suggests to Saru, and I agree with Pike, it's not the best or most effective conflict resolution method. Although I watched this latest Fresh Off the Boat episode, I think the Chinese New Year episode, where it suggested that tussle, like wrestling or grappling, between two opposing or conflicting entities or individuals, that sometimes airing it out through grappling and physical tussle, that could help. Um, that's what they're suggesting, and that's what we see in this episode. Saru's like, hey, let's allow this to play out. but why the reason why that method is not healthily suggested as part of conflict resolution is because during that process, that tussle, grappling, or just letting it out brutally, during that process, either one of the two people could get hurt, and intentionally or unintentionally, um, And so if that happens, if one of them gets hurt, then that doesn't solve anything, does it? So that's why it's not recommended, that method of conflict resolution. But the fact that Saru allows it, that's just it's just it cracks me up. It cracks me up. You did not expect that from Saru. And 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 Stamets should know though. Should know better. I guess maybe Stamets is trying to deny what he knows better. And by that I mean, like, you can't just straight up play house, right? This guy just came back from the dead, and the guy who killed him, Tyler's walking around in close proximity to him. So Stamets just playing like, oh, let's just pretend like everything's okay, like back in, like it was before, like we were, back when we were in love, and let's kumbaya, and let's just forget that what happened happened. And that's not a healthy road to recovery. And I don't see that Hugh lashing out on Stamets as something healthy as well. But it's obvious that that Hugh needs to resolve certain things, especially with her with his um, pent up anger towards Tyler. It's like, let Volk out, because Volk killed me. Like, so I think as much as many of us Star Trek Discovery fans would love for those two lovers, Hugh and Stamets, to become, the romantic part of each episode of Star Trek Discovery, you know, as much as we love to see that again, I think it's a good thing that they're apart right now. That they're each of them kind of tries to figure out where they are. Um, I think it's a healthy thing that each of them gives each other space. So yeah, it's very. My reaction or my thoughts about that whole arc in this episode is that it's very well thought out. Um, Because if the writers had just pretty much like act as if, oh yeah, now Hugh is back as part of the team, part of the medical team again, then that would not be uh, good writing on their part, right? For example, if I think there's a show, I forgot what the show was like. I can't remember the title right now, but somebody died, and that grief by the people around him was never dealt with. I think it was Young Justice, right? Wally Wallace died, and then all of a sudden, uh, I forgot his name, her name. Well, anyway, I hate it whenever somebody dies, and then the next episode, it's like back to business as usual, and that's not good because we want to see how the characters that character left behind, how they dealt with that loss, that grief. We need to have at least one episode dedicated to that. So it's a good thing, it's a good move on the writer's part to show or to dedicate this episode to show, like, okay, obviously there's some issues that need resolving, that Hugh, as part of the Star Trek Discovery team. So I think it's very well thought out on their part. So yeah, that's my reaction, my thoughts on that last arc. Overall, again, it's good to see Melissa George. I hope we get to see her again. Oh my God, I love her. She's one of my favorite actresses. She doesn't get enough gigs, man. She doesn't get enough. We don't get to see Melissa George in much of anything, as as much as she deserves. Like, so. Hopefully, we get to see Vina again, in subsequent episodes. Next week, as you can see from the preview, they're gonna deal with that one character on the bridge, that has been corrupted, um, and there's going to be physical conflict between her and Burnham. I can't wait to see that. That's next Thursday, so make sure you check out my review. Next Thursday, I'll be back in LA. Right now, I'm in Austin covering South by Southwest. So make sure you subscribe. Tell everybody to subscribe to this channel because I'll be giving a lot of live stream coverage, live stream review of South by Southwest 2019 right here, straight from Austin, Texas. Thank you guys. Let's wrap this.